So, this will be the only podcast of the week. I think it's perfectly timed because we'll be able to knock out a lot of different topics that have arisen this week, and we'll be able to preview the Wildcard weekend, which is going to be exactly that wild. You got three family business matchups over the weekend. You got a bunch of backup quarterbacks, which makes things maybe a less intriguing potentially, but maybe there's a opportunity for some big upsets. Who knows? We'll see. There's some big numbers. I mean, there's some big numbers. Teams are laying some big numbers this weekend, which tells you that this shouldn't be as compelling, but I think we're going to get 2 or 3 gems out of the weekend. We'll talk about that and a bunch of other topics on the 309th installment of the Louie T Network podcast that starts now. Who else could it be but me, your man, Louie T? Welcome to the 309th installment of the Louie T Network podcast. I, of course, am your set man, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. Before we get into the proceedings this evening, I want to first send a massive shout out to all of you who participated in the LTN exclusives this year, whether you were in the weekly pick'em pool. Shout out to a couple of guys. Let me make sure I don't forget anybody because you guys were awesome all year long. Shout out to Will Arnold and my guy Twin D in particular for playing in the weekly pick'em pool pretty much the entire season. That makes it so much more enjoyable when we got a little something on the line each and every single week. So shout out to those two guys in particular. Shout out to everyone that was in the winners and losers league this year. It was the biggest pot ever. Boss Man won the pot that was over $1,000. And so I didn't even come in first, second, or third. I didn't even show. Okay. I didn't even place, which this is the second year in a row. And I just missed out on third place. I was in second place for much of the season. I could never quite get to first. And I'm like my own team that I root for. I keep digging myself this incredibly deep hole early in the season. And then I think I can turn the shit on. And I actually did turn it on this year. I was down 12 games and I cut the deficit to, I think, 2 before falling off a damn cliff at the end of the season. And it was a hell of a run. I'm proud of myself for the amount of, ground that I was able to make up, but still not finished. I finished in 4th. That sucks. I wanted to win first and foremost, but at least get first, second, or third. Get second or third. You got to be in there. And frustration. I'll just say that. But shout out to Boss Man for getting it done. And this was a hard season to predict. It was all over the place. And this was one that took skill. And he was able to come out on top. So shout out to Boss Man. And shout out to every single one of you who made it to the finish line. We started about, 40-something deep. And I think it finished with about maybe roughly 25 of us. This is a war of attrition, right? This winners and losers league. It's not for the faint of heart. It's not for the type of people who don't have the ability to persevere. And I respect those who stink it up, but week after week continue to send in picks because it takes some level of competitiveness to not just say F it. I'm not going to win. I like those who start out slow or in a deep hole, but dig them. So I watched some of you, 25 games under 500, pull yourself up by the bootstraps and get over 500 and finish the season on a good note. So shout out to all of you who participated in any of the LTN exclusives. We had a winner in the survivor pool a long time ago. Matter of fact, let me give him a shout out real quick. That was Rockin' Rob, big Giants fan, was able to win the Soul Survivor pool. This was like back in week 9 or so. So survivor pools usually you're in and out, man. And this one was crazy because the Broncos made sure that a lot of people weren't going to have a shot this year with they stinking ass. But I'm being one of them, of course. That's why I had to make sure that Nathaniel Hackett did not survive this year after the bullshit he pulled in week 1 against Seattle. Anyway, I digress. One more thing that I want to talk about before we get into the gym dropping session, and that is a couple of guys that have pulled through. And January has been sympathetic. Really, 2023 to this point has been sympathetic because in the past 3 years or so, going all the way back to 2020, January of 2020, when Kobe passed, we really haven't gotten good news in January. When the year turns to the next, it's usually been a lot of morbid news. And people passing away, and death usually comes in threes. And when I saw that what's Barbara Walters passed, I was like, oh shit, here we go. Yeah, and it begins. But that hasn't really been the case. DeMar Hamlin, prayers go to JC, man. That big man upstairs, and he works in mysterious ways. And DeMar Hamlin has been released from the hospital. I mean, what we saw on a Monday night a week ago to where we are now, just nothing short of miraculous. That guy was not breathing and did not have a pulse on the field on Monday Night Football. So that's incredible that we are where we are with him. And then Peyton Hillis, I was sitting in this seat, I think having a podcast episode with you when I found out from you all that Peyton Hillis had, saved his kids in a pool. And in the process of that happening, he was fighting for his life. He was in critical condition, and it didn't look good for him for a while. He is now off of a ventilator. He is now breathing on his own, and he is trending in the right direction. So again, man, in past years, we would have gotten bad news about DeMar Hamlin and Peyton Hillis. And, in 2023, thus far, we've been getting good news in these types of situations. So, prayers still be still go up to DeMar Hamlin and Peyton Hillis and their situations and their continued health. And got to give praise and all the glory to JC, man. I mean, he's out here blessing folks straight up. But let's get into the gym dropping session today, shall we? I think we shall. Let me drop this gem on your melon. Open your mind, let your conscience be free. You're now rolling with your man, Louie T double E. Let me open you up. Get you thinking a little bit. So, sticking with the theme of 2023 being a little bit more forgiving than what we've seen in the past, Black Monday came and went. And I didn't think it was as eventful as past Black Mondays have been. Now, last year's was, I thought it was very busy, but we also saw more firings as time kind of elapsed. So it wasn't like the initial shot. Like Black Monday used to literally be exactly that. When teams would get rid of their coaches, it would literally happen on the Monday after the season was over, the regular season. And so that's why the name Black Monday came about, because there was 6-7 dudes getting chopped. That's no longer the case. I thought this was a very unique season in the sense that we've only seen 2 head coaches fired in this year. Okay. Now there are right now 5 openings, but 3 of those guys were fired in season. Like we saw a lot of in-season firings, and what you're seeing is a lot of, I think this really results, some of it, every situation is different. Let me first say that. But I think some of what we've seen is the result of, one, impatient ownership, which I think 2 of the firings have to do with. There's nothing wrong with admitting you made a mistake, though. But 2 of the firings I think that happened in season were a byproduct of ownership that's just really impatient. But I think also what you have to take into consideration too, and I think the 3rd firing had more to do with that than anything else, is Sean Payton is out there lurking. And if you want Sean Payton, you need to put your bid in earlier than anybody else. So if you're trying to get that ball rolling, you need to fire your coach in season so you can technically be able to go out and talk to other coaches, court other coaches. If you still have a head coach under contract for your team, you're not allowed to be, that's tampering. You're not allowed to talk to another head coach. So if you're looking to get that ball rolling, then you need to go ahead and part ways with the guy that you know isn't going to be there after the season's done, which is what the Panthers did with Matt Rule, which is what the Colts did with Frank Reich, and that's what the Broncos did with Nathaniel Hackett. So all those guys were fired in season. Rule was fired in October. You had Reich fired in November, and then Hackett was fired the day after Christmas in December. So none of those were 2023 firings. The only two of those we've had was the day after the season, Black Monday, literally Sunday night, honestly. Lovie Smith was fired from the Texans. And I had a snippet of a show that I did probably – it had to be last year, this time, maybe a month, after, the season got the season was over, because I specifically told Lovie Smith and any brothers out there, do not take this Texans job. They are setting you up for failure. They're looking for guys. They're looking for fall guys to take the lumps while they suck, because it's the same thing I thought the Lions were doing with Jared Goff. I was wrong about that, but I thought the Lions were saying, hey, somebody's got to be the quarterback of this team while we suck. Might as well be Jared Goff, right? Might as well pick up a bunch of picks, take him off the hands of the Rams, and we'll eat whatever he's being paid, because it'll be worth it with all the draft capital that we'll receive. They fired David Culley after a year when I thought he did a fantastic job. He had no talent, absolutely zero. And he dealt with that Deshaun Watson situation, and he took it in stride, and they fired him anyway. You know what I said? Good for you, David, because he had already said, hey, I'm not coaching as an assistant again. This is it for me. He got an early NFL pension and retirement check. He got 1 year of a 4-year deal, and he's being paid as we speak right now. Good for David Culley. The Texans then went out and hired Lovie Smith out of nowhere. The man just got fired from Illinois. Like, it's the same thing that the Cardinals did with Cliff Kingsbury. Like, you literally just fired a dude that couldn't even cut it in college. So you really want me to believe that he's going to get it done? And I actually believed in Cliff Kingsbury because of Kyler Murray. I thought he'd be able to do some really good things. And then come to find out, Kyler Murray really wasn't successful at running his offense, and he was frustrated with Kyler Murray. And so that was a whole mess. And the Texans did the same thing with Lovie Smith. I'm like, Lovie Smith, this is the retread you go get? Like, I'm glad Jim Caldwell didn't get that job, because, and Jim probably knew better. Like, really? Y'all just fired David Culley, and you really expect me to take this job with no quarterback, no light at the end of the tunnel? You want me to? I said, brothers out there everywhere, I know you want jobs. I know you desperate. Don't be Texans desperate, because they out here hacking folks. They looking for fall guys out here. Now, this year, you can take the job if you're a brother. I recommend that because you're about to get you a quarterback. You're about to actually have an opportunity to win, or at least have a chance to win in the next 2-3 years. You can take the job now. But this was a death trap for the last 2 years, especially when the Watson situation. When David Culley took the job, he knew, I'll never get a chance to be a head coach. This is the only opportunity I'm going to get, so I'm going to take it. And look, like I said, it ended up being an early retirement for him. I'm not even mad anymore. I was hot when they first fired him, but I'm not even mad for that man anymore. Hey, get your bread, bro. He off somewhere, sipping iced tea, playing with his grandkids right now. Good for him. Lovie Smith will be doing the same next year. And I don't foresee anyone hiring Lovie Smith unless Lovie's cool with being a coordinator or, some kind of positional coach. His head coaching days in the NFL are done. And as far as I'm concerned, if I'm Lovie, I'm good. I really don't need to be anybody. I mean, again, it's easy for me to say. He's a football lifer. So it's easy for me to say, hey, just go home, collect your checks, and chill, kick it with family, enjoy that time. But if this is what you know, if this is all you know, and if this is what you love doing, who am I to tell you, hey, don't be a defensive coordinator or don't be a linebackers coach? Who am I to tell you that? Or don't be someone's assistant head coach / defensive coordinator or whatever. We'll see what he decides to do. But, bro, you're getting a check for the next 3 years, man. You don't really have to do anything if you don't want to. But anyway, I digress. So we've got 5 openings. But really what this cycle has been about, and again, it could change. We could see more firings when it's all said and done. But I don't think anybody else is getting fired. I think this is it. 5 coaches. Now, what we've seen this cycle, I think the Black Monday was more about coordinators. We've seen a lot of them. See, this is how you know that you're not going to get more firings. When coordinators get fired, that means the coach is sticking around, and maybe the owner went to the coach and said, bro, you can stay, but your man's got to go. And or maybe you just made the decision and you said, hey, we should have won more games, i.e. Ron Rivera. Nobody told him Scott Turner had to go. I'm pretty sure he sat down and maybe his general manager was like, bro, we got too much talent for this shit. I can't say. But I can tell you that Ronald Rivera came to the conclusion that this ain't good enough. And he got rid of Scott Turner, right? I think there were some owners that were like, bro, your man's got to go. Like Woody Johnson in New York with the Jets. Robert Saleh's boy is Matt LaFleur, all right? So getting rid of his brother, Mike LaFleur, that's not what he wanted to do. Those boys came from San Francisco together. That's his boy. He didn't want to get rid of him. But I think Woody Johnson was like, look, Robert, I like you a lot, but your man's, he ain't cool. He got to go. And if you ain't going to fire him, you got to go. So you got to make a decision. And Robert was like, bro, say less. All right, I'll take care of it in the morning. And so, Mike LaFleur has been fired. So let's quickly go through all of the changes that have been made. But we've seen, I think this is the most coordinator changes this early in the process that we've seen. Normally, coaches get pressured into getting rid of their coordinators. That happens later in the cycle. But we've seen 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 coordinators get fired. All right. And we've got 5 head coaching vacancies, and then we've got 2 GM vacancies. Remember last year we ended up with like 7 new GMs, 7 or 8 new GMs. We had like 9 new head coaches. It was 10 new head coaches last year, like 7 new GMs. It was crazy last year. That's what Black Friday is. Like that's what I don't think we're going to get to that number this year. I think teams are actually cool with their coaching situation. But these coordinators are getting canned. So obviously, I've given you the openings. Carolina, Matt Rule / Steve Wilks. The players are actually pushing for Steve Wilks to keep that job. I don't think he's going to retain that. I think to me, it's like the situation with the Raiders last year, where the players really wanted the organization to hold on to the interim coach that took them to the playoffs, Rich Bisaccia, and I don't think he was ever really in the running to get the job, and it was a shame. Steve Wilks is in that same boat. I've heard countless players speak on his behalf and say he gives us the reels. Like we know where we stand, and this guy is a stand-up coach, and I think he's the anti-Matt Rule, and I think that's why he was received so well. But I think they're looking for more. Their owner is very impatient. We saw that when he first took over the job, got rid of Ron Rivera after 12 games or so, went out and threw stupid money at Matt Rule. The most it was like, bro, this is a college coach, right? Like, you sure you want to do this? College coaches be coming in here and stinking. You sure you want to do this? He did it anyway, and Matt Rule didn't make it out of the season. That was in October. I mean, that was ugly. Colts, have an opening. Frank Reich was fired in November. They hired Jeff Saturday. That's a dysfunctional situation with a very impatient owner, even though he stuck with Frank Reich and he's sticking with the GM, Chris Ballard, probably a year too long. But I'm interested to see, because if they don't trade up to number 1, I'm interested to see who really wants that job. It's not a terrible roster, but if they don't have a quarterback, they stink. And if you don't go up to 1, you're not getting one of the big 2. And I mean, theoretically, if you like Will Levis, you can stay at 4 and draft Will Levis. Have at it. I wouldn't do that if I were you, but knock yourself out. Nathaniel Hackett in Denver, that's the big job that's available right now because Russell Wilson's there. The Broncos have a wealth of talent. You just assume that that's a job that will be coveted, but not so fast, my friends. I think Russell Wilson makes that a complicated job to hand to someone because you're dealing with a veteran quarterback that feels like he's earned the right to have a say so in organizational matters, more so roster than anything else. But I think there is a sense of entitlement there with Russell Wilson. Maybe a little bit of that. Maybe he was humbled a bit. No, I don't know. I don't know if Russell Wilson's necessarily the humble type in terms of what he believes should be going on with the roster or this, that, and the third. But we know what kind of a player he is. And I don't think Sean Payton fits in terms of what Sean Payton wants to do offensively and Russell Wilson's skill set. I don't think those two actually mesh and gel well together. I don't think Sean Payton wants to be tied to Russell Wilson. And so I don't think they're going to land Sean Payton, the Broncos are going to land him. I think he's more likely to end up in Arizona with Kyler Murray. And I think he feels like he can fix Kyler Murray and make it, because Kyler Murray is literally similar size to Drew Brees, quick release. Remember how much fun Peyton was having scheming up plays for Taysom Hill. With that athleticism that Kyler Murray possesses, he'll be able to do some creative things with him. They have talent now. The DeAndre Hopkins on the trade block thing complicates matters, but Sean Payton's never had a problem, getting, and they still got talented receivers there. He's never had problems, finding a diamond in the rough at the receiver position and making, like Marquise Colston, for instance, and making that guy really good. So I think Arizona might be the landing destination for Sean Payton when it's all said and done, but we'll see. The Texans with Lovie Smith, that's an intriguing job now, other than the fact that the last 2 seasons, brothers have been, had their head chopped off after one season. But so if you a brother like, interesting name in Houston, I was talking to a buddy of mine and he was like, watch out for DeMeco Ryans going back home to Houston. It makes a ton of sense to me. He's going to be a hot name. DeMeco Ryans will be hired this hiring cycle. He will get a job. So that'll be, 2 out of the last 3 years of 49ers defensive coordinator has gotten work as a head coach. Texans sound like and he also made the point of saying, look, the Texans are in no position to hire anything but a minority, preferably a brother. After you chopped off the head of 2 brothers 2 years in a row, you better hire another brother and give him more than a year. It makes sense to me. If we keep it in a buck, makes sense to me. So I think DeMeco Ryans and what's a better story than going home? And if you're DeMeco Ryans, you get to, essentially start over with a blank slate. There's some talent on that Texans defense. It's not, the cupboard is not completely bare. You got a corner that's a stud, that has a chance to be a stud, rather, in Derek Stingley Jr. I love Jalen Petrie. There's some stuff there, right? You're probably going to need to revamp that defensive line. You need to be able to get more pressure on the quarterback. But I think Jerry Hughes still showed he's got a little something left in the tank. The kid that they traded for with the Seattle Seahawks, I think he's got a little something too. And then you just got to find pieces in the draft, right? So add to the fact that you're going to get a quarterback. Like, you're going to have a real signal. Now, Brandon Cooks wants out again. Doesn't make it easier for you offensively, but you'll figure that stuff out. And then Arizona, Cliff Kingsbury gets canned. We later found out we could see that him and Kyler Murray's relationship wasn't all that great. I talked about that timeout on a Monday night where Kyler Murray is slam cussing him out, and DeAndre Hopkins has to come over and be the voice of reason, which if DeAndre Hopkins is being the voice of reason, some shit is going on, right? And Cliff just took that shit in stride, like, nah, that's just Kyler being Kyler. Like, nah, he can't be you the head coach, he can't be cussing you out like that on national television. So you can see the writing on the wall there, and he's no longer there. And I think Sean Payton ends up there. I think DeMeco Ryans end up in Houston. I think the Broncos are going to have to settle for somebody that, I think a coach that's an offensive coordinator that is his first time getting a job is going to end up in Denver. I don't think it's going to be a name that we know unless it's like Jim Caldwell or something. And I don't think he's going to end up in Denver. I don't think they're interested in him. I think it's going to be a name like a Ben Johnson, someone like that hasn't had an opportunity to be a head coach yet, doesn't really know what he's getting himself into. But they want an offensive guy to try to get that, because the defense if their defensive coordinator doesn't get hired, and he's a name that's circulating, if he doesn't get hired, then the defense is going to continue to be good. You just got to find someone to whip that offense into shape. So we'll see what they do. The Colts, that's another interesting job, because if I'm a head coach candidate, I don't think I want anything to do with that Colts job right now. It's too much dysfunction there. I need stability before I even entertain going there. Between the owner, a GM that's probably going to be in a lame duck season. If that GM picks me, he gets fired, new GM comes in, he's going to give me 1 year to show that I belong as a head coach, or he's going to fire my ass and get his own guy. That's just not a situation I want to be in if I'm a head coaching candidate. I'll either get something else, or I'll just wait for another hiring cycle and see what happens next year. But I'm not fooling around with that coach job. Panthers, very intriguing stuff there. Here's the problem with them. They won too many games, and now they're not in a position to get one of those quarterbacks. They're not even in a position to get and I'm not a big fan of his, but they're not even in a position to get Will Levis at this point. They're at like 9, 10, somewhere in that range. So unless they're going to trade up, and that's still a possibility, and their owner is one of those dudes that's willing to roll the dice. He will be in the mix to trade up to 1 with Chicago. But if they do trade up, and they'll have their coach by then, so you won't know if you're getting a quarterback. Like, you can't sell somebody on Sam Darnold. That's not the move. So that's another one of those jobs where you just look at it and say, I really don't know what you're going to do there, but we'll see what happens. Then you get to the GM jobs. We got 2 of those open. In December, Titans fired GM John Robinson. And remember, we talked about it on the podcast. I was shocked behind that happening. Like, it was out of nowhere. The Titans were, 7-4 and 3 games clear of the Colts in the division. And yeah, look, they had just got their ass mollywopped by the Eagles, and AJ Brown was the one doing the ass kicking. And so it was embarrassing. And I think they overreacted. Look, they could have fired him on the 8th or the 9th or the 10th. They didn't have to do it in December. I think that was the football god slapping them on the wrist for being a bit rambunctious there. But notwithstanding, they got a GM job opening. And that's a toughie, because unless Mike Vrabel is in the discussions of helping them select the new GM, that's a tough spot to be in, because we already saw Mike Vrabel contribute to someone getting fired in Tennessee, which means he's got a little bit of power. So if you're a GM coming in here, if Mike Vrabel isn't your boy and you are hired independently of Mike Vrabel, that's a tough spot to be in. I mean, you're just thinking about it. Like, unless it's a Mike Vrabel, sign off. If ownership decides, Mike, you just worry about coaching up the talent we get you. We're going to get you a guy that's going to find you some good players. Don't worry about this part of the process. We got it from here. And they go hire a guy independently of Mike Vrabel. That's a odd spot to be in. Just something to consider. I'd like to think that they'll get Mike Vrabel's input. They got his input when they fired John Robinson. I assume they're going to get his input when they go to hire the next GM. We'll see what happens there. Cardinals, on the same day Cliff Kingsbury was fired, GM Steve Keim steps down and retires. He's got some personal stuff going on. I don't know if it's health related, but the dude's been busted for DUI before, and he had something else happen last year, I think. So I think he's got some things that he has to clean up in his life. And I wouldn't be shocked if we see him come back around 3-4 years from now, similar to what we're seeing now with the former Giants GM, Jerry Reese. His wife passed away, and, that hit him hard. And so he had to step away. He couldn't continue to work. Some people need to throw themselves into work. When you have a significant other that close to you pass away, you need a distraction. It was the opposite for him. He needed time to really process everything, get his life back in a position where he could work professionally and be the best version of himself on the job. Now he's back in these GM conversations again. Maybe you'll see that with Steve Keim down the road. But he's stepping away from the Cardinals job. And then we get to the coordinator jobs that have come about. And on January 9th, Joe Woods was fired as the defensive coordinator of the Cleveland Browns. They were disappointing this year on the defensive side of the football. And so they're going to be looking. And again, Kevin Stefanski is comfortable as the head coach there. So now they're going to try to find a good defensive coordinator to go with Stefanski as an offensive guy. Now that Deshaun Watson's there, they're going to try to figure that out, get him back to playing the kind of football that we know he's capable of. And they need a defense to complement what they're doing on offense. Titans fired their offensive coordinator, Todd Downing, on January 9th as well. He had the DUI earlier this season, wasn't a good look. Obviously, he had a ton of, injuries, and with Tannehill at quarterback and Derrick Henry at the running back position, even though Henry really didn't miss too many games this season. He did miss the one game against Dallas, but that was more so gearing up for that Week 17 finale, or Week 18 rather finale. But there was just too much going on with the Titans, and they didn't have any talent. And then the injuries to the young fella at the receiver position didn't help matters. And he was kind of given a raw deal because there wasn't a lot to work with. They were asking this man to make some delicious lemonade out of rotten lemons. And it is what it is. He didn't help himself by getting a DUI after a big win against Green Bay. He didn't help himself at all. Falcons defensive coordinator Dean Pease retired on January 9th. So now the Falcons defensive coordinator spot is available. We'll see what Arthur Smith decides to do there as far as, hiring a defensive coordinator that will give them a fighting chance. They got to clean up some shit on offense. I don't know if they view, Desmond Ridder as the quarterback of the future there or not, but defensively they need to be better. And Dean Pease is no longer there. And he had his moments. There were games like the San Francisco game where they destroyed the 49ers, forced turnovers, things of that nature. But they also gave up a lot in critical situations. And Chargers game obviously sticks out. The Saints game in Week 1 sticks out like a sore thumb. There are too many of those as well. So we'll see what they do there. January 10th, Washington Commanders fire offensive coordinator Scott Turner. For Washington fans, that was a sight for sore eyes. It was one of those rejoicing moments. I think we're going to have several of those this offseason, but it was the first in what we hope is 2 or 3 of them this offseason, because his inability to maximize the talent, have situational awareness, and really just have the offense be average. If this offense was average this season, just average, Washington is a 10-win team and they're in the playoffs. Because the offense was below average, they were an 8-win team and they missed out on the playoffs. And a lot of that falls in the lap of Scott Turner. A lot of it falls in his lap. So Ron Rivera made the right decision here. I don't know what propelled him to do this, whether he saw this on his own, whether his GM, Martin Mayhew, and some others in the organization said, we got to make a move here. Scott's not getting it. Or if Ron came to that conclusion himself and just said, this isn't good enough. We should have been in the playoffs, and Scott Turner's a huge part of the reason why we're not. He's gone. And what makes this a complicated hire, and I didn't consider this when it first happened. I was just thinking about all the weapons and the slight sample that you got of Sam Howell might intrigue someone with De'Ami, or not De'Ami Brown, with Terry McLaurin and Curtis Samuel and Jahan Dotson in particular. De'Ami Brown is a part of that mix with all these weapons, Antonio Gibson and Brian Robinson at the running back position. I just figured this would be a really intriguing job for someone if you felt like if you believed in Sam Howell's ability and what you could potentially do with him and all the talent surrounding him. Got to clean up the offensive line. Got to do some other things. But I didn't consider the fact that this is a lame duck staff. You're going to change ownership here shortly, which means new ownership is going to come in, and they're going to give Ron Rivera 1 year to show them and prove to them that he belongs as the coach of the Commanders or else they're going to fire him and get their own guy in here. And really, it's not about Ron Rivera in particular. It's about getting your own GM, because everybody that is in the building right now is there because of Ron Rivera. He's responsible for every single member of the staff, and most of the roster is there because of Ron Rivera. So in saying that, if you want a new GM, you got to fire the one that's currently there. Ron Rivera brought that guy there, you know. If you want a new offensive coordinator or you want a new defensive coordinator, Ron Rivera brought all these guys here. You want new positional coaches. Obviously, if you go to Ron and say, hey, you get rid of this guy or you got to go, he'll have to make a decision. But the likelihood is you just clean house. Get a new GM, let that GM pick the head coach, let that head coach and GM find the quarterback, and that's how you go about business. So with that said, if you're an established offensive coordinator and or a positional coach, let's say you're a quarterbacks coach or your quality control or whatever, running backs coach, whatever the case may be, and you're looking for an opportunity to be an OC. If you're comfortable where you are, everyone's looking for upward mobility. No one's looking to be a positional coach. That's it. I mean, there may be some people that are really comfortable being the offensive line coach and they don't want to be anything else. But most young coaches are hungry for a promotion. They're looking to climb up that ladder. And if you get an opportunity, this is the thing. We'll talk about this more later on tonight. I don't want to say too much. Jets offensive coordinator, Matt LaFleur, I just talked about him, was fired on January 11th. So I think this was more Woody Johnson driven. Woody's back. You know, he was over in Ireland for like 3 or 4 years. I think he came back last year, and now he's putting his foot down. Like, okay, all right, I'm back in the building for real, and I think we're close. And Mike LaFleur has to go. So I think he's driving his car. We'll see what Robert Saleh decides to do, but that's another opening. And Woody Johnson has already said, and we'll talk about this when we get to social media maneuvers, he's already said, I think we're a quarterback away, and I will spend for a veteran quarterback. That sounds like Derek Carr to me. That sounds, because I looked at Derek Carr's numbers and what you're going to be on the hook for if you trade for Derek Carr. It's insane. If you trade for Derek Carr, he's due $33 million this year. And it's a $33 million cap hit if you try to get out, which no one's going to trade for him and try to get out. But what if he stinks after year one and you want out? Well, he's due $42 million in 2024, and it's a $42 million cap hit. Okay, well, he was average in year one. We thought he would be better after being more comfortable in our system year two. He regressed, and he was even worse. I want out in year three. Well, he's due $43 million in 2025, and it's a $43 million cap hit. Who's signing up for that? Other than a team that thinks they are close. I'm good. That should be enough to scare Washington away. Not that he should be interested in that job anyway. If what his brother David Carr said he's looking for, obviously we ain't it. But that ain't gonna stop Ron and company from inquiring. I hope that scares them away. That's too much damn money to be tied to a guy that ain't done shit in this league for 9 years. All right. Who's been inconsistent at best. Had some moments. We all remember 2016, but that ain't enough. So anyway, I digress. Let's get to social media maneuvers. I'm a midday marauder. Y'all know what it is. Let's jump into the comment section and see what you guys have to say. If you want your comment read, use the hashtag LouieTLive to have your comment read. If you want to jump straight to the front of the line, super chats are the way to do that. We will jump into social media maneuvers for the next 20 to 25 minutes, and then we'll wrap up the show with a preview of Wildcard weekend, and I'll give you my predictions for these games, what I think is going to happen. So we'll get to as many comments as we can in that span. So with that said, let's jump into the first super chat from the Phillies Ace 34. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Who writes, My guy Louie, what's good, my friend? Watching the Super Friends stream, amazing. Since I know you are on the couch, that's why I made it a point that y'all beat the Eagles and the Cowboys. But I wish you were an Eagles fan. It's all good. The Phillies ace 34. It's all love, man. I appreciate your support, despite being a dirty dick dastardly Philadelphia Eagles fan. You are my guy. I rock with you, and I appreciate you. And so, with that said, I am on the couch. I will be watching, and I will have company here shortly. So I won't be alone for very long. Kyle, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy Kyle writes, Lou, where do you see Derek Carr going to? Tennessee, Indy? It'll be a team. Like, if I'm Indianapolis, how many times are you going to go the veteran quarterback route? Like, this is the perfect season for you to draft a young quarterback, whether you go up to number 1 and trade with Chicago, or you stand pat at 4 and you allow a quarterback like Will Levis to fall in your lap. And look, if you don't love Will Levis, do not draft him. Okay, don't just draft a quarterback for the sake of drafting a quarterback. But this is it for GM Chris Ballard. If he doesn't figure out a solution, whether it's a veteran again or a young guy, if he doesn't figure out an answer, and soon and fast and quick, that appeases ownership, he's going to be fired. So I'd imagine that he's going to do something this offseason. His move has been, since he's gotten to Indy, because he thought he was going to have Andrew Luck for the next 10 to 12 years. He inherited Andrew Luck, so he really hasn't shown the ability to draft anybody or to develop anything, right? So since Andrew Luck's left, they've had a new starting quarterback every single year. They've had a new starting quarterback, I think, every year since like 2017 or something. Luck was the starter then it was like Jacoby Brissett. Then it was like, Billy Ho or something. And then it was, I think it was Phillip Rivers. Then it was Carson Wentz. Then it was obviously Matt Ryan this year. And there's going to be somebody different again this upcoming season. So I don't know if Tennessee or Indy is necessarily. I think they need to draft a quarterback, but that's a place. Don't discount Indy. Tennessee is interesting. I still want to see what they decide to do. Obviously, they're looking for an upgrade over Ryan Tannehill. I think the Jets is the landing destination for Derek Carr. Their owner has already said we're willing to spend. Well, that makes sense because you're going to have to spend to go get Derek Carr. And they've got talent on both sides of the football. They got all the receivers they could ask for. They got all the, defensive pieces in place. They could use probably one more corner because teams are going away from Sauce Gardner's side of the field. But at the end of the day, I think they're going to get Breece Hall back at some point at the running back. I think they feel really good about the talent. They've done so much work via the draft with so much draft capital after making trades and doing things that I don't think they're going to be opposed to giving up, a second this year and a third next year or something like that for Derek Carr. I don't think they'll be opposed and eating the money that I just talked about, 33, 42, and then 43 in consecutive years, if they think he's the guy that could put them over the top. And Woody Johnson literally said, we are a veteran quarterback away. And that means they're done with Zach Wilson, essentially. And that means he's willing to do whatever it takes to push them over the top. And he thinks a veteran quarterback is the missing piece. And that's where Derek Carr wants to be. They're stable in ownership, which is Woody Johnson, who's already saying, essentially, I want you. And they got a head coach. So I think that's a great place. Good defense, tons of weapons, young weapons, talented weapons, Elijah Moore. And I think the best rookie receiver this year was the Ohio State wide receiver, not Chris Olave. I don't know why I'm blanking on his name. Garrett Wilson. I think he was the best rookie receiver this year. All right. And so you get Garrett Wilson, Elijah Moore, Corey Davis, Braxton Berrios. You got enough stuff out there, right? Tight ends, you went and signed like 15 of them in free agency, and you drafted a guy that I love out of Ohio State. They got stuff everywhere. Breece Hall, Michael Carter in the backfield. They got a whole bunch of stuff. They're loaded, man. Now you just need the quarterback to come in. That's how they view it. So I think he'll end up in New York with the Jets. John Perez. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you, my guy, JP. writes, NFL needs to send a memo to head coaching candidates and free agents and draft prospects that warns them to stay far away from the Texans. Then obviously they've been in flux since the Deshaun Watson situation. They've kind of been in free fall mode, and really what they've done effectively, other than Lovie Smith, which I loved, which was a nice FU to that organization, because he probably knew he was getting fired, was to win and get them out of the number 1 overall pick. Y'all gonna fire me? I'm gonna get paid, and I'm gonna give you a nice FU on the way out by getting this dub over Indy on the way out. That's been a situation where they knew they were going to suck once Deshaun Watson was no longer their quarterback. They knew they were going to have to take it on the chin, and they've been doing that the last 2 years. And I don't like how they've gone about it necessarily. And I still don't really see the residual effect on offense quite yet. You know, normally when you're taking your L's on in this manner, you've got some things to show for it. I don't necessarily feel that way on offense. There isn't one guy that stands out other than a 5th-round running back that they selected in Dameon Pierce, who stands out on offense. They got some stuff, you know, the Michigan wide receiver, a couple of tight ends. They're okay, but OJ Howard might have been their best tight end. He was released by the Bucs and they picked him up, or the Bills rather. He was released by the Buffalo Bills and they picked him up. Like, I don't see any real talent on the offensive side. I think all the talent that they do have, that they have selected, is on the defense. So that's a frustrating situation. But if they're going to fix it, this is the offseason where real change needs to be made. Tangible changes need to be made. And it starts with getting it right at quarterback, which you're just going to take the other guy. Whomever doesn't go 1, you're going to take that guy at 2. So you start there, and then you start building from there. They're going to get John Mechie back this year, looks like. That's a start, right? That helps. Okay. And then you go from there, and then you see what you can do. So, yeah, it's not pretty, but I think DeMeco Ryans is going to end up there, personally. The Phillies Ace 34, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Who writes, I agree. You want to be on a roll going into the playoffs. With injuries we have, for us, we needed it, in my opinion. Eagles last number 1 to win Super Bowl. Your thoughts? This is a big bye week for you because Jalen Hurts has to be healthy, because the Jalen Hurts I saw on Sunday was not healthy. He was contact averse, and which he should have been. You know, you don't want to put yourself in harm's way, especially against the Giants JV squad. However, that team that I saw on Sunday isn't the team that I saw steamroll that same Giants team with the starters on the field back in like week 16. That's not the same, or week 14 rather. That's not the same Eagles team that I saw. That didn't look explosive. That didn't look dynamic. That looked like a team that was hanging on by a thread. So I've already talked about playoff momentum. The reason that a number 1 seed hasn't won the Super Bowl since 2017 is because teams are, when you win in the playoffs, there is this jolt of confidence, bravado, and swagger that you get. And all of a sudden you're thinking, why not us? And then you get this team that's cold coming off the bench. They're well rested, but they haven't played ball in a week or two. And now all of a sudden they come off, they thinking, oh, okay, we good now. We ready to go. And this team is all lathered up. And they cut through your ass like a hot knife through butter. And so we saw it last year. Both number 1s were gone just like that. Neither one of them made them to the championship game. The Bengals beat the Titans in the AFC, and the 49ers beat the Packers in the NFC. And it could easily happen again this year. My buddy is predicting, I'm not on board with him on this, but he's predicting that the Chargers are going to go to Kansas City and beat the Chiefs next week, and which is very possible because we know that's family business, and we know the Chargers played the Chiefs tougher than anybody else in the league, not named Buffalo and Cincinnati. So that could easily happen. And in the NFC, I could easily see a situation where Dallas, goes to, or Tampa for that matter, depending on what happens, goes to Philadelphia and the Eagles get blitzed. I could see that happening. I don't think the Giants can beat them though, but anything's possible. And so, with the situation the way it is, if you get healthy and you get some semblance of Jalen Hurts, the MVP candidate back, then you're going to have a legitimate shot of making a run. If he comes back and he's still compromised, I think you guys could be in some trouble. And your defense is okay, but I think your defense can be exposed in the playoffs. You're not playing the Tennessee Titans or the Indianapolis Colts or the Houston Texans anymore. You're not playing those teams anymore like you've been playing most of the season. You're going to play some legit NFL offenses, and I think your defense could get exposed. So we'll see what happens. But like I said about the NFC all season long, even before the season started, this shit is wide open. You can go all the way to the Super Bowl. Dallas could go all the way to the Super Bowl. Tampa could go all the way to the Super Bowl. San Francisco can go all the way to the Super Bowl. It's wide open. So, Loser the Redskins fan writes, which playoff game this weekend are you most excited to watch? The Cowboys and Buccaneers on Monday. That's where it's at. It's the shortest line. Jacksonville and the Chargers are the shortest line, but Dallas is in Tampa Bay. It doesn't get much bigger than that. Brady versus America's team. Are you kidding me? I'm being an NFC East guy. That's where it's at for me. I'm intrigued by the Chargers in Jacksonville, two young budding stars at the quarterback position in their first ever playoff game doing battle. That should be fun. But there's like one game each day that I'm looking forward to. And we'll get to that in Wildcard when we get to Wildcard weekend to close out the show in garbage time. McCready writes, 4 of the 7 teams on the AFC bracket have never won the bowl. Buffalo, Cincinnati, Jacksonville, and the Chargers. Which one has the best chance of breaking through? Buffalo. Without a doubt. They've put in the work. They've gone through the heartbreak. And tell me that this doesn't have like Hollywood storybook ending written all over it for Buffalo. They were the favorites. Remember, they were the prohibitive favorites before the season started to win the Super Bowl. And they started out with a bang. There was a little bit of a fizzle, in the midpoint of the season, but they've bounced back. They've shown the intestinal fortitude and the tough metal that you need to be able to survive in January and into February. And they've got the experience. They've got the playoff battle scars to be able to overcome adversity should it hit in a playoff game. So I like Buffalo. Cincinnati, obviously going to the Super Bowl last year gives them a ton of confidence, but Jacksonville and the Chargers aren't ready yet. So I think it's Buffalo or Cincinnati. I'm going to take the Buffalo Bills. Jason Bree, thank you for the super chat. Or Jason writes, LT, hope you're doing great. If Purdy were to take San Francisco past the divisional, who do you think is their starter next year? And is the other one then a legit trade target for QB needy teams? The 49ers aren't going to give up on Trey Lance. I just don't see that happen unless there's something wrong with Trey Lance in practice and they don't really like what they've seen to this point. They're not going to give up on a guy that they traded up to get. It's too early, and they know the upside on him is much greater than that of Brock Purdy. So could Purdy end up being a Tom Brady type? Absolutely. And that's not lost on Kyle Shanahan, which is why even if Brock Purdy makes it to the championship game and they lose similar to Jimmy Garoppolo, they're not getting rid of either one of those guys. They're going to let this, they don't have to make a decision. This is what people fail to realize is they don't have to make a decision right now. Trey Lance is going into year 3 of a rookie contract. They've got 3 more seasons to figure out if he's the guy or not. If they pick up the 5th-year option, they've got 3 more years. Brock Purdy is on a rookie contract. He's in year 1 of a 4-year deal. They don't have to do anything right now. They don't have to rush and make a decision and get rid of one guy to keep the other. They can keep both of these quarterbacks to figure out which one of them is the right man for the job. And once they identify that, then you can move on. Will some of the value be lost if you do it that way? Sure, because if you sit Brock Purdy down in order, which they will do next year, in order to give Trey Lance a shot at being the guy, and Trey Lance turns out to not be what you desire him to be, and you go back to Purdy and he proves once and for all that he is the right man for the job, i.e., Robert Griffin III versus, Kirk Cousins. and it ends up being the guy that you took later as an afterthought, then that then pulls the value of a Trey Lance down, for teams that are looking. But that's nor here nor there. The bottom line is none of these quarterbacks will be available. The only quarterback that will be moving from San Francisco next year is Jimmy Garoppolo. Brock Purdy and Trey Lance will both be in San Francisco next year. And as far as I'm concerned, for at least the next 2 seasons, more likely than not. Red Wings 01, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Red Wings 01, thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Writes, how much say do you think the new offensive coordinator will have in bringing in a new staff? I expect some guys like Zampese and Matsko to be untouchable, but I think we should look at tight end coach. Hasn't been the same since the last guy retired. So understand that Juan Castillo, who is the tight ends coach, was brought in by Ron Rivera, and Juan Castillo has coached multiple positions, offensive line at one point, and so he's got a thorough background as a teacher, as a coach that teaches, which is what Ron wants. I don't think they're looking to replace him. And honestly, just off the strength of Amani Rodgers doing what he was able to do this year, you should be able to say, hey, Juan Castillo did a really good job, just based off of a guy that had never played tight end before. Not only making this team, but ultimately at one point we were looking at him as arguably the best tight end on the roster, especially with upside. We wanted him to touch it more. And the fact that he was able to come in here, he wasn't a great blocker, but he was adequate. He wasn't a detriment on the field as a blocker. They were able to get something out of him as a blocker. And I thought they could have gotten even more out of him as a receiver if Scott Turner was competent. And so I think just off the strength of that, getting a guy that had never played tight end, that was a quarterback, making that transition that quickly, you got to give Juan Castillo some credit for that. I don't think the new OC is going to come in and have a lot of say-so as far as personnel, guys underneath him, because really the job of an offensive coordinator isn't to be really concerned with what's going on with positional coaches. That's the job of a head coach. Your job as an offensive coordinator is to get the most out of the talent that you have. Put together a plan each week that gives your team the best opportunity to win. Exploit the weaknesses of the defense that you're playing against, minimize the weaknesses of the offense that you're coaching, and get the most out of the individual players that you have on your team. That really doesn't concern you with tight end coach, offensive line coach, none of that stuff. So as far as I'm concerned, they're going to just be looking for a guy independent of all the other, coaching positions. That's Ron's job, not the offensive coordinator's job. So I don't think you're going to see an offensive coordinator come in and want to bring a guy or two with him. I don't see that happening. Kyle, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Kyle, who writes, should Matt Ryan or Phillip Rivers be in the Hall of Fame, you think? Phillip Rivers, I think, could make a case for being in the Hall of Fame. His numbers are outstanding. Matt Ryan, I don't think is a Hall of Fame quarterback. Now, it's crazy because Matt Ryan played in the Super Bowl. Phillip Rivers did not. Matt Ryan won a league MVP. Phillip Rivers did not. So you could make a case for Matt Ryan. I don't think Matt Ryan was ever really truly viewed as, one of those types of quarterbacks in his generation where you could say, man, Matt Ryan was that dude. For 1 year in 2016 he was, but I think Phillip Rivers, like the best coaches in the league, i.e. Bill Belichick, said the toughest guy to game plan against was Phillip Rivers. He was like another coach on the field. Like, I think Phillip Rivers was viewed in a different light than a guy like Matt Ryan. So I think Phillip Rivers, you look at the numbers, we all remember him winning a playoff game and getting to the AFC Championship on a torn ACL. I think Phillip Rivers is a Hall of Fame quarterback, if you ask me. I don't know if he'll be first ballot, but I think he gets in. I don't think Matt Ryan's a Hall of Fame quarterback. The Phillies ace, 34. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you, who writes, Lou, it's speculated that we are going to lose both coordinators. Since you like our offensive coordinator, can Rivera bring him in if that happens? Shane Steichen has been outstanding this year. But if he leaves Philadelphia, it won't be a lateral move. it'll be for a head coaching job. So again, I don't see Shane Steichen ending up somewhere where he isn't getting a head coaching job. So we'll see what happens. Red Wing 01, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Who writes, I wonder if the Panthers have a plan for Matt Corral. I would love to see him go to a team like the Jets. He would have been a perfect fit in San Francisco, in my opinion. I don't think they do. Again, the league spoke last year during the draft about those quarterbacks. Nothing is guaranteed to a third round pick in this league. If you want a sniff, you got to, at a bare minimum, be a second. You're only guaranteed an opportunity if you're a first. And with there only being one guy going in the first, and that was Kenny Pickett last year, no quarterbacks going in the second, and then 3 going in the third, Corral, Willis, and Ritter, I think the league spoke, and they said, we don't think any of these guys outside of Kenny Pickett are, viable NFL starters. We think all of these guys are more so backup type quarterbacks or developmental prospects at a bare minimum. And the Panthers, I mean, personally, you could get a coach that really liked Matt Corral coming into the league last year and said, hey, I can work with him. I don't know if anybody's really clamoring to go to Carolina to work with Matt Corral. I think they want to kind of hit the reset button there. So he's interesting. You know how I felt about Matt Corral. I thought he was one of the most. I thought Sam Howell was the wild card of the group last year, and I thought Matt Corral had a chance to be the best of that group. And I thought Kenny Pickett and Desmond Ridder were the most NFL prepared of that group, meaning they come in day one and be ready to help your team win 10 games and make it to the playoffs. Kenny Pickett almost did it in Pittsburgh. And I think if Ridder would have gotten a nod in Atlanta earlier, they would have been better off long-term for that, in the season rather, but it is what it is at this point. I don't think Matt Corral is really going to be, the focal point of this, Carolina Panthers quarterback position. I don't think they're just going to dismiss him. I think he'll get an opportunity, especially if they're at 9, right? 9 or 10. So they're not in a position really, unless they trade up, to get one of these quarterbacks. Now they could, Anthony Richardson. I told you, I'm not a fan, but all it takes is one, right? So we'll see what they decide to do. It'll be interesting. I think he gets lost in the shuffle is what I think. I think he gets lost in the shuffle. All right. Let's get into our final segment of the show and garbage time. And so let's jump into garbage time and talk about Wildcard weekend. I want to preview it. I want to give you my predictions for the outcome of the weekend. I will not be working tomorrow. I will be taking tomorrow off. Why? Because I am going to be working like a dog over the weekend. I'll be working Saturday. Obviously, I'll be working Sunday. I'll be working Monday. So there will be no work from your man Louie T on Friday. But with that said, I'm excited about Wildcard weekend. My guy, that I was talking to, he was like, man, this is trash. I'm like, no, I don't think so. There's a game every single day that I'm juiced for. All right, so let's go through Wildcard weekend and talk about each and every single game and what I think is going to transpire. So we start on Saturday. The first game, 4:30, kicks off Wildcard weekend in the postseason. Number 7 seed Seattle Seahawks taking on the number 2 seeded San Francisco 49ers at 4:30 on Saturday afternoon in Santa Clara. The 49ers are 10-point favorites. They are laying 10 in this game. And I'm just telling you right now, Seattle's playing possum. Pete Carroll's already come out and said, unfortunately, we're playing San Francisco. So you're doing the woe is me thing. Oh, my God. Oh, shucks. Not the 49ers. But inside that locker room, he's telling his team, we can beat their asses. We had them on Thursday Night Football late in the season, and we just didn't make enough plays, And so I think he's telling his team behind closed doors, we can go to San Francisco and beat them. It's hard to beat a team 3 times in one season, but I just don't see them doing it. Geno Smith is actually playing his worst football of the season. He had 2 interceptions against the Rams in that Week 18 win where they barely squeaked by the Rams. They've regressed. The offense has gotten progressively worse as the season has worn on. And so it's not the same Seattle offense that was scoring 48 points on the road against Detroit earlier this season. They've come back to earth. They've got a running back that was all world for them, and Kenneth Walker the third. He's banged up now, dealing with some issues. That ankle, I don't think ever really healed, when he jammed it, 3 or 4 weeks ago. And so he's somewhat compromised. I don't see Seattle going into San Francisco, who's getting healthier, and beating them. I'll take the 49ers in that game to advance. 10 points is a lot. I don't know if they win by 10. I could see them winning a 27-16 type of ball game, but I could easily see this being, 26-20. I don't know if this will necessarily be a blowout or so, but I wouldn't take the 10. I just know that. But I think San Francisco wins, and they might win by 2 scores. I could see them winning by 9 points in this game. I could see them winning this game 29-20 or 26-17, as I just mentioned. So I'll take the 49ers to advance. In the nightcap, this is the game that I'm intrigued by on Saturday. I really don't think, which is why the NFL put Seattle at San Francisco first, because nobody's really moved by that game. Okay. There's no star power in that game. That's why you put it first. If you're running errands on Saturday and you're going to be running a little late, that's the game you can miss some of, and you won't be any worse for the wear. This nightcap, though, this has got some pizzazz and juice dripping all over it. All right. You got a third-year quarterback in Justin Herbert making his first postseason appearance, which we feel like is long overdue. And then you've got a second-year quarterback in Trevor Lawrence, finally getting an opportunity to showcase what he can do with a real head coach in Doug Peterson. They had this ridiculous turnaround this year, and now they're in the playoffs and they're hosting a playoff game. It's a 4-5. Jacksonville right now is a 1.5 point favorite, which means if they were on the road, they'd be 1.5 point dogs in this game. So essentially, Vegas is telling you this is a pick 'em. Okay, that's essentially what they're telling you. If the Chargers were home, which I don't even know if Vegas gives them 3 points for being home, because their home field really isn't a home field advantage. That said, this is an intriguing game because Jacksonville, I think you can run on them. I think you can run the football on the Jacksonville Jaguars. Okay. But the Chargers don't run the football. So you're not going to take advantage of one of the weaknesses I think that the Jacksonville Jaguars have as a football team, which is I think you can run the football on them consistently. Thus, you're going to put the football in the hands of Justin Herbert and Mike Williams. I broke my back. He hurt his back last week, but apparently he's going to be able to go. They think they dodged a bullet there, and he's going to be. But they told me that the last time when he had an ankle injury, he went out, he played like 3 snaps, and then he was out of the game. So we'll see what happens there. The bottom line is I'm not impressed with the Chargers offensively. Joe Lombardi doesn't move me as an offensive coordinator, and thus I don't think that they're going to be dynamic in this game, which is going to give Jacksonville a chance. But Jacksonville, they play tight in these types of situations. I could see Lawrence missing some throws like he's done in these big spots. I could see this being a much lower scoring game than people think. And I could easily see Jacksonville winning this game, but just like Vegas has it, I could see the Chargers winning this game. It's one of those, it's definitely a pick 'em game. I think the score is 20-16. You can put it however you want in terms of who wins, who's got 20, who's got 16. I think that the Chargers are going to do just enough to win this game. I really think Jacksonville. Matter of fact, and this is a rematch. Remember, Jacksonville steamrolled these boys. Remember, this was Herbert coming off of the, cracked ribs against the Chiefs, playing the following week and absolutely getting shredded by Jacksonville. So this is a get back game. This is a revenge game for the Chargers. They're much more prepared this time around. Keenan Allen didn't play in that first game. He'll be playing. They're more comfortable in who they are as a football team now than they were then. I think Jacksonville has a shot. I wouldn't be shocked if they win, but I think the Chargers are going to go in there and win this game 20-16. Turnovers will be the key. The team that wins the turnover battle, I assure you of this, and this isn't the case for every one of these games, but the team that wins the turnover battle will win that game. I think that's the most important turnover battle game of the weekend right there. Chargers and Jags. I'll take the Chargers 20-16 over Jacksonville. Sunday. 3 games. We'll go over them quickly. Miami, 7 seed at Buffalo, 2 seed, AFC East family business. If these two teams said they ain't did it, then they ain't did it. But if they did, well, that's family business. I'll just tell you this. Buffalo is a 13-point favorite in this game. Tua's already been ruled out. He's still in concussion protocol, which is the right call here. Teddy Bridgewater doesn't look like he's going to play either, which means we are getting third-string quarterback play once again. The story of him getting him into the playoffs is cool. Good for him. He's not beating the Buffalo Bills. Tua couldn't even beat the Buffalo Bills the second time around. This is going to get ugly. The Bills will win this one. This isn't even going to be close. I think the number is fine. They're going to win this game by 2 scores or more, are the Buffalo Bills. And that in that environment in Buffalo will be rocking. It'll be a juiced up, ginned up crowd, and they're going to feed off of that energy and destroy the Buffalo Bills or the Miami Dolphins rather in that game. I think this is going to be a 31-10 type of game. Buffalo advances. Giants, Vikings. This is the game I'm excited about on Sunday because we've seen these two teams do battle. We've seen them do battle in Minnesota, and this thing came down to a walk-off field goal at the end of regulation. And so I've been screaming this probably for the last 2 months. Nobody's afraid to go to Minnesota in the playoffs. Should the Vikings be the 2 or the 3 seed, teams are going to be chomping at the bit to get the 7 or the 6 seed because you think you can go into Minnesota and win. Vikings are 3-point favorites, which means that this game would be we're playing in New York, it'd be a pick 'em. That's essentially what Vegas is telling you. We're only giving the Vikings the nod because they're home. That said, this Giants team plays defense. They played defense on the Vikings the first game. They turned it over. They made some mistakes that cost them that game, a drop pass, a couple of turnovers when they were moving the football. They had every opportunity to beat the Vikings the first time, and I think they're capable of doing it. But as I mentioned last night, I think people are just underestimating and dismissing the Vikings because of all of the close wins. And it's easy to do that. I was guilty of that at one point, but they didn't win 12 games or 13 or whatever they finished with on accident. Like, they're a good football team. And because of that, they've been in pressure-packed situations. They've handled it well, and I think they'll do it again. This is going to be a close game. It's going to come down to the wire. I think the Giants are going to have every opportunity to win. Daniel Jones is going to have the football with a chance in this game, and I don't think he's going to get it done. 23-17. I've got the Vikings advancing, but not by much, okay? Not by much at all. Ravens at Bengals. I think the Lamar Jackson thing is more compelling than the actual game that will be played on Sunday night. Bengals are your 3 seed. Ravens are your 6 seed. AFC North family business. You know how to family do it. 9.5-point favorites are the Bengals in this game. And I think that's strictly off of the fact that Lamar Jackson is questionable. I think he's really, he is taking an opportunity to make a statement to the Ravens. Pay me or I do whatever the hell I want to do. And if you don't like it, let me walk. I'll get paid somewhere. Someone's going to break him off. They're not going to do that. They're going to franchise tag him at worst. So he could have come back from this injury, I believe, already. If he was totally committed, if he had already been paid, I think he would have been back. But because he hasn't been shown the money yet, he's like, nah, I'm taking my time. I'm not going to injure myself and, put my future in jeopardy. Nah. And so because of all of that, people think that they may have to go to Tyler Huntley in this game, or they may have to go to the rookie from Oregon in this game. And if that's the case, they're going to get dog walked in this game. Even if Lamar plays, he hasn't played in over 2 months. What is to say that he's going to come out there and give him a spark? Whatever the case may be, Cincinnati, I think, is the better team anyway. and I think they're going to win this game. 10 points might be a bit much. 9.5 might be a bit much. I could see this being, a 26 to 19 type of game. The Ravens are going to hang around, and they're not going to let the Bengals just run away and hide with this. But I think Cincinnati, I think they are the right side. I think they are going to win this game. I'll take the Bengals to advance. And then we get to Monday, and this is the game I'm most excited about in Wildcard Weekend. Someone asked earlier, this is the game that moved the needle for me the most. Dallas at Tampa Bay. Dallas is right now a 2.5-point favorite. I told you all year long, Tampa Bay has been so frustrating. That has not changed, even since the 200-yard outburst in Week 17 with Mike Evans and Tom Brady, I still don't believe in this Buccaneers offense. Dallas is a walking turnover. They are undisciplined in terms of execution and doing the things that they need to do. I've already given my prediction for this game on the stream last night, but I'll give it once more. I think this is a 20-19 victory for the Buccaneers. I think this game is 17-13 with roughly 4 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. Bucs are leading. Dak Prescott gets the football and goes on a drive that is supposed to be career defining. He takes them in the end zone. They score the touchdown, and Brett Maher misses the extra point, which gives Brady an opportunity to not look for the tie in overtime, but rather the win with 1 minute and 10 seconds left. Brady does exactly that, marches them down the field, gets into field goal range, and I think Ryan Suckup is the Buccaneers kicker, is going to deposit a 46-yard field goal as time expires to beat the Cowboys 20-19 in a Monday night thriller. That is my prediction for the wild card weekend. And I really think that this weekend could either be really disappointing or really compelling. I don't think it'll end up being somewhere in between. Either these are all really close games, maybe except one, maybe two, but all really close games. 4 out of the 6 games are close, or you're going to get 5 out of the 6 being ass kickings. I don't think it's going to be 3-3, like 3 really good games, 3 blowouts. I think it's either really good weekend or we're like, man, that was a really garbage wild card weekend. I think it's going to be the former, not the latter. I think this is going to be a really good weekend of ball. Anyway, that's going to do it for me, your man Louie T, here on the 309th installment of the Louie T Network podcast. I look forward to chopping it up with you guys on Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and beyond. So with that said, you guys go and enjoy your weekend. If you're a Washington fan, I will see you later on tonight for the season finale of Commanders Nightly News Live. With that said, you guys enjoy the rest of your evening. See you next time. And as always, God bless and good night.